What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Sorry for the technical difficulties. Live streaming is new for me, so let's get the ball rolling here. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them on over. Sorry, guys, having some technical difficulties here. Just give me 1 second while I iron those out. If you could let me know whether or not you can hear me. I'm live streaming, obviously, from a different location than I usually am, using different software. So please let me know if you can hear me. That would be wonderful if you could do that right now for me. Can you guys hear me okay? Apologies for the confusion. Excellent. All right. So, welcome to Last Minute Global History and Geography Review. My name is Mr. Cellini. You probably have seen my videos on YouTube before. If you haven't, please check those out because while the live stuff is good at the last minute, probably the best thing you could possibly do is watch as many of my old videos as you can because, as you might know, the format of the Regents has not changed since June 2019, and they love to ask the same questions over and over again. They love to use similar documents over and over again. So a couple of people have already asked me questions about things like the Amritsar massacre and the Sharpsville massacre. Okay, these are two events that contributed to the beginnings of increased nationalism and independence movements in their respective countries. So we can go over that first. Let me just give people a second to kind of figure out where my new stream is because like I said, I had some technical issues with the software. I'm pretty good at making videos, but live streaming is not something I'm that proficient at. So if we could just give people a second to filter in to the new link here, that would be great. Thanks for hopping in. We'll get started in a second. Definitely good to review a list of enduring issues. I've got many enduring issues videos and links to enduring issues that might be worth remembering. So feel free to go ahead and do that. If you guys, again, could just bear with me 1 second while I get some technical issues ironed out. I promise it'll be worthwhile, but having some trouble. I'm trying to also get my own students to hop in, and I sent them the link to the stream that got messed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that again while people kind of filter in. And let's get locked in for some Regents review. We'll get going in just a second here. Bear with me again. My name is Mr. Cellini. If you haven't already seen my videos, please definitely check those out. I think it would be worth your while to do so. Try to cram in as much review as you can between now and tomorrow afternoon. I really can't believe that tomorrow afternoon is the Regents exam. Hopefully, you guys can learn something from me right now. But again, I think your best bet is to certainly check out the old videos. Again, just bear with me. I'm trying to share this live stream with my own students so that they can hop in. So I'm just posting to my Google respective Google Classroom pages. If you could bear with me, it's pretty cool doing extra help for basically the whole state. That's my intended audience, if you will, right now. 10th grade students across the great state, the Empire State, if you will, the great state of New York. So if you could just bear with me while I post to my Google Classroom pages. And feel free to talk with each other. You guys are a good resource for each other as well. Again, thank you for your patience. Hopefully, this will be worth your time. All right. Got my pages, got the link shared on Google Classroom. So I think perhaps we are ready to go. Just let me do one more thing. Again, I'm very, very sorry. I am new to live streaming. There's a lot of technology involved with all this stuff that I'm still pretty new at. A lot of software that I'm not that comfortable with. I do my editing in Final Cut Pro. Live streaming, I use a different program called OBS, which is free, but not the most user friendly. I often have glitches with OBS. If you know anything about live streaming, you probably know about OBS. Okay, I think we're good to go now. If you could just let me know again if you can hear me. I'm still adjusting audio levels. All good? You guys can hear me okay? If you could just shoot me some feedback in the chat to let me know that you can hear the stream, I would appreciate that. Again, newbie here when it comes to the world of live streaming. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much for that. Loud and clear. Thank you so much for the feedback. Okay, so I've got some scenes here, if you will. I will take some notes. So the Amritsar massacre is the thing we're going to talk about first. Okay, the Amritsar massacre happens right around World War One, just after World War One, in fact. And that is basically when a bunch of Indians in northern India, Amritsars in northern India, people were protesting a British law. Okay, you don't need to know the specifics about that law. I believe it was a law that allowed the British to arrest people in India without due process. So without like a trial process, without being presented with a formal list of charges. And that was designed to kind of keep Indian nationalism in check. But it kind of had the opposite effect, okay? Because these protesters who were unarmed, some of them were killed during this peaceful protest, okay? And that kind of convinces the people of India that being part of the British Empire was simply not going to be for them, okay? And this will help usher in the Indian National... I mean, the Indian National Congress already existed, but the Indian National Congress probably got more support. People like Gandhi would rise to prominence after the Amritsar massacre, and that would help eventually usher in Indian independence after World War II. Okay, after a lot of civil disobedience. So I'm just going to put for some notes if you're looking to take notes here. Led to increased Indian nationalism and desire for independence. Normally, nationalism and independence movements often go hand in hand, because if you don't have pride in your country and want to see it be strong, you probably don't care whether or not you're independent, okay? And nationalism also implies unity. Gandhi had to build a bridge between Hindus and Muslims to get them to work together in order to get the British out of India, okay? The Sharpsville massacre, I believe someone asked about that. I'm forgetting at the moment how to spell Sharpsville. There's no E in there, I believe. Okay. Sharpsville massacre has to do with a protest against apartheid. Okay. Students in black neighborhoods, black South African neighborhoods, were being required to learn the Dutch Afrikaans language. And people were not happy about that. And that was kind of like a last straw due to decades of apartheid. And there was conflict in the streets between protesters and the police, and many people died. And that also helped usher in more of a demand to end apartheid. And if you remember, ending apartheid took a global effort, right? There was a global, maybe a global is extreme. Not every country boycotted South Africa, but many countries did. And that put pressure on the white minority government to end apartheid and give the right to vote to black South Africans. And then Nelson Mandela was elected the first black president of South Africa. You don't see my notes. I apologize for that. Does that help? Sorry about that. Again, new to live streaming. Apologies. Okay, so Amritsar Massacre, Sharpsville Massacre. Let me go ahead and put that led to end of apartheid. And yes, that's how it's pronounced in South Africa. Apologies. Okay. Sorry about that. Can you see it now? Again, newbie when it comes to the world of live streaming. Okay, beautiful. All right, so a lot of people kind of hit me up in the chat, which is wonderful. So that's the Amritsar massacre, Sharpsville massacre. What else would you guys like to talk about? I'll try to answer as many of you guys' questions as you can. Plaza de Mayo. Okay, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo do come up on the Regents now and again. Let me go ahead and write down some notes about them. I'm blanking at the moment which Regents exam they came up in last time, but let's take some notes. One thing you guys can do if you guys have access to AI tools, okay, sometimes AI is a very powerful tool, and you could take the PDFs of every Regents exam that's ever been given, put them into like Google Notebook, and then you can ask Google Notebook, like, hey, tell me what I need to know about the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo to help me succeed on these Regents exams. Or you could start a project in ChatGPT and put all the PDFs of the old Regents exams into ChatGPT and go, hey, point me in the direction of the questions on all these Regents exams that pertain to the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo. Okay, I think AI can be a tool used for good sometimes. Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo. Okay, this is in Argentina. The Plaza de Mayo is in Buenos Aires, okay, which is the capital of Argentina. And basically, what was going on in like the 1970s, I believe, is that this is like the thick of the Cold War, okay, and containment did not just apply to uh, containing communism in Europe and Asia, but also in the Americas, okay. And when there was a whiff of a communist uprising in Argentina, usually when groups try to fight in favor of communism, someone is on the other side saying no, right? Typically the wealthy. And a military government took power in Argentina and suppressed a leftist, maybe communist movement in Argentina. And this military government was supported by the US, right? We did support anti-communist governments around the world. And so the military government of Argentina was arresting and taking people off the streets, and people were disappearing. Okay, and the mothers of these people that were disappearing were protesting that military government. Okay, so protested military government of Argentina because it was arresting and disappearing people who were accused of being leftists, comma, communists. Okay, you see a similar thing happening at the same time in Chile with their military government as well. What else? What else would you guys want to talk about? I have no idea what the enduring issue will be. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. We haven't had well, we had human rights violations last year. So it's probably unlikely that you're going to get a lot of documents that refer to human rights violations, but sometimes, um, you could find multiple enduring issues in the same set of documents. Just a quick thing, guys. It's hard for me to both manage review and also manage a chat. So if people are going to spam the chat, I do have the ability to bounce them from the live stream. So if we can kind of avoid spamming the chat, I would certainly appreciate that. Enduring Issues essay. We could talk about that a little bit, but you should definitely check out my Enduring Issues videos where I go over the process. Okay, you want to read all 5 documents. You want to try to highlight the basic facts: who, what, when, where, and why, because ultimately you will have to summarize 3 out of the 5 documents. And you want to identify one issue that's common in 3 out of those 5. So I tell my students to highlight basic facts from all the documents, make a list under each document of all the applicable enduring issues you could think of, and then find one that's common. Okay, so please definitely check out my enduring issues videos. It might be more helpful to watch those than to have me repeat that whole process here. but maybe we could practice, what I mean. So let me turn to another screen for a second here. Let me pull up an old Regents exam, and I'll go down to the enduring issues task. Okay, hopefully you guys have seen this at this point. You can download all these old Regents exams on the state website. All right, but like it says here, this is the CRQ. Let me just keep going here. You want to identify and define an enduring issue, just one raised by the set of documents. So what I tell my students to do is highlight like who, what, when, where, and why stuff. Okay. And then underneath, like I said, you want to make like a list. I tell my kids, hey, make a list of enduring issues. Oh, lost my pen for a second here. What happened to my little tablet here? Right. So underneath the document, right, maybe make yourself a note that says EI, and make yourself a list of all the enduring issues that you could associate. I'm getting some lag here. With that particular document, and maybe make some notes for outside information and historical circumstances. Because if you want to get a good job, do a good job on the enduring issues essay, you're gonna need to do that. All right, but again, definitely check out my enduring issues videos for skills. I'm here to kind of do crash course on some content stuff at this particular point. But for skills stuff, like CRQ skills and enduring issue skills, you're gonna want to check out the videos. Yeah, Stephen, for sure. Okay. Something my students often get caught up in is trying to focus their entire paragraph on circumstances and outside information. But if you're not writing detailed information about the documents, you're not going to do well either. You got to have a little bit of both. Okay. That's definitely important. You want to show the people who are grading your exam that you're able to read and process information from a document, not just recall the stuff that you learned about in class. Commodore Matthew Perry is important in that Commodore Matthew Perry kind of gets the Meiji restoration going. Okay, so let me go back to my notes for a second. The Meiji restoration of Japan. We say restoration because before Meiji was the emperor of Japan, shoguns ruled over Japan. Okay, so we're kind of restoring the position of emperor into being the main authority in Japan. Don't worry about the word restoration, that's confusing. Just think Meiji period. And I'll say triggered by the arrival of Matthew Perry. Okay, because before Matthew Perry arrives in the middle of the 19th century, I'm forgetting the exact year. You don't need to know exact years for the regions for the most part. Okay, when Matthew Perry arrives, just before that, Japan was choosing to be isolated from the rest of the world. They didn't want to trade with the rest of the world. Matthew Perry arrives and demands trading rights between the US and Japan. And Japan goes, well, we can't really choose to resist the United States right now because we saw what happened to China. Japan is saying this right now. Japan's like, well, we saw what Britain did to China in the Opium War. We don't want that to happen to us. So we're going to agree to America's terms to open up trade between the US and Japan. They'll sign the Treaty of Kanagawa, giving America trading rights in Japan. But Japan's like, we're not going to allow ourselves to be bossed around by other countries. 1854 sounds about right. Lol, it's me. That sounds about right. And so Japan begins this process of modernization, westernization, industrialization. And within decades, Japan becomes a world power. How can we prove it? They beat Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905. Okay, but remember, since they lack natural resources, they have to begin the process of imperialism if they're going to pursue this modernization and westernization. And yes, this is for Global 10. Those the person that's asking for sure. Global 10. Islamic Revolution. Okay, we could do a little bit about the Islamic Revolution. So I'm assuming you mean Iran. Iran in 1979. Okay, some quick hits there. Before equals Shah Pahlavi. Shah Reza Pahlavi ruled over Iran. Okay, and this is a guy who was kind of like the Meiji of Iran. He brought in modernization, westernization, industrialization. But the thing is, a lot of people did not like the Shah because kind of some people kind of saw him as like America's puppet because the United States kind of supported this guy in his rise to power, and the U.S. and the British removed kind of did some regime change and removed one of Iran's leaders, and put the Shah into a position of absolute authority. So people kind of thought the Shah is just doing whatever America wants. They didn't like that. And the Shah was bringing in Western culture, and the religious establishment of Iran, the traditionalists, did not like that. Okay, so um, the religious authorities, in conjunction with a lot of students, led a revolution in Iran and turned Iran back into a theocracy, a country led by religious leaders. Thank you for the kind words. Wow, one's already really appreciate that. Happy to help. Um, I would not get consumed about remembering specific dates for the regents. Okay, dates are going to appear in the documents when you guys take this test. It might be good to know like when World War II ends, 1945, right when the atomic bombs are dropped. Okay, but for the most part, I would not be caught up so much in specific dates. Have a general sense of when things happened. That's more important. Schlieffen Plan. Sure, we can absolutely talk about the Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan, if I can get the spelling on that one. I believe I spelled it right. Schliefffen. The Schlieffen Plan was Germany's attempt to avoid the two front war. Right, Germany was kind of landlocked. I don't have an opportunity right now. I don't have the time to be pulling up maps. So I don't want to disrupt the live stream. But Germany is surrounded by it was surrounded by two countries on the opposing alliance, right? So I had to deal with Russia in the east, I had to deal with France in the west. So Germany is like, well, if we engage in World War One, if we go on the offensive, we're gonna have a problem. We're surrounded by our enemies. So they thought Russia would be slow to get ready for the war or mobilize. That's the key term the Regents likes to use sometimes. Germany thought Russia would be slow to get ready, so they're going to rush into France, okay, and beat France quickly, and then divert all their people and resources to the east to then take down Russia once France was dealt with. But the thing is, they charge into France. It wasn't as quick as it would be during World War II because you don't have the fast tanks early in World War One. You don't have planes used in warfare just yet, so it's a slow charge. Right? And the French were they had machine guns too. Okay, they start firing. The Germans get kind of nervous. They start digging trenches. The French dig their trenches, and instead of a quick war, you get a slow stalemate conflict in the West. Okay, and Russia got ready more quickly than the Germans expected, and so Germany does have to fight the two front war. French Revolution, Industrial Revolution dates. You might want to know that the French Revolution started in 1789. That would not hurt. Okay, in terms of the Industrial Revolution, I would think just have a general sense of the early 19th century, which is the early 1800s, so early to mid 1800s is really when the Industrial Revolution is rolling for sure. Boxer Rebellion is before Spheres of Influence. Let's talk about that a little bit. Why don't we do? Let me just get my other screen going here. Hang on. Okay, good. So we could say maybe imperialism in China. Why don't we say Britain wanted a favorable balance of trade? What does that mean? Well, that means that China was doing its own thing. It was making products of high quality, probably didn't feel the need for industrialization because I guess you don't really need machines to produce goods quickly if you have a large population of people producing goods quickly, even if it's by hand. So China's happy doing its thing. Britain's buying stuff from China, like tea, porcelain, silk, but not able to sell anything to China. So Britain wanted to even out the trade balance, right? Import, sure, but also export to China. But China wanted nothing to do with it. Britain turns to opium to get the Chinese hooked on that illegally. Okay, China didn't want this inside of their country. China tries to resist. Britain wins because they have superior military technology, right? They already began their process of industrialization. So then China is carved into spheres of influence after losing Opium War. Britain forced China to sign the Treaty of Nanjing. Treaty of Nanjing. And Britain got Hong Kong. And then, yes, China would be carved up into spheres of influence. You might want to Google a map of spheres of influence because all that really means is that the British did not have direct control over Chinese lands, except really Hong Kong, but they controlled the trade in certain parts of China. Okay. And that's what the British wanted in the first place, right? Control over markets, more people buying stuff. If they could control the trade in regions of China, then they would be able to determine what's sold in those places and basically push British goods on Chinese people. Sepoy Rebellion. Be happy to do that. Okay, similar time period. We can do imperialism in India. Let me just shift screens. Let's do this. Imperialism. Let me move this a little bit. Remember, guys, I'm just one person. I don't have any moderators, but if I do see people spamming the chat, I will unfortunately have to remove them from here. So if we could just be respectful and just keep it relevant to the Regents review, I would appreciate that. I don't want to have to close this thing out. I want people to have this opportunity to study. So imperialism in India, you might want to know that began with the British East India Company, which was a corporation that was just looking to make trade, have trade between Britain and India. They wanted to uh, bring ships over to India, buy things like spices and cotton, and then sell them back in Britain at a higher price. That was the whole purpose, pardon me, of that corporation. And the British government gave the British East India Company the right to do a lot of things, like raise its own army, to own its own land, right? Imagine if McDonald's had its own army of troops to defend it or to expand its interests. That's the people often talk about corporations have a lot of having a lot of power today. They certainly had a lot of power back then as well. And so the British East India Company starts chipping away at the Mughal Empire, which had control over India prior to the British having control over India. Um, the British East India Company is doing some things that starts to irritate the people of India, maybe not respecting Indian culture so much. And that kind of comes to a head with the whole rifle cartridge thing. Maybe your teacher talked to you guys about how the little packets containing bullets had to be bitten open before they were loaded into the gun. And the rifle cartridges were greased with either cow fat or pork fat, which um, offended either Hindus or Muslims. Okay, so the sepoys who were working for the British East India Company were not happy about this. They launch an uprising in 1857, and the British squash it. But then the British government says, East India Company, y'all messed up. Okay, you guys got to go, and we're going to govern India directly as a colony. What does that mean? They treated India like they treated New York when New York was one of the 13 colonies, right? They put British people here, or rather, they put British people in India to run India instead of just having this corporation own just a couple of regions of India, I guess we could say. Okay, so that shows the Indian people that they got to get with the times in terms of modernization. And it also showed people like Gandhi that fighting the British with weapons probably wasn't going to work. And so they turned to civil disobedience as a way to um, get um, get independence. Does that help? Someone told me to scroll up. Gobi, there's so many names. It's hard for me to just rattle them off. Maybe at some point I should make a master list of names of the most important people to know in the regions. But as you guys should see, if you're practicing these exams, the Regents is less these days about recalling specific people. If they're going to ask you about a person, chances are that person is going to come up in the document. Okay, it's more like, can you do reading comprehension and can you connect cause and effect to something, whether that's the multiple choice or the CRQ. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me shift screens for a second and go to a multiple choice question. This is August 2019. I have open for some reason. Okay, so here's a set of questions. Can you guys see this? Okay. All right. What the situation described in the passage was part of which historical development? So it's making a connection to something else, right? You're supposed to be able to recognize that the Soviet Union invading other places is a feature of the Cold War, right? Because the Cold War is when the Soviet Union is looking to spread communist influence to more places. So making a connection between an event and something you learned about in class. And then number 24 says, which major political event was partially caused by the Soviet war in Afghanistan? That's basically saying that this document led to which other thing that happened later in history, and that's the collapse of the Soviet Union, because the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan required a tremendous amount of money and effort, and it kind of bled the Soviet Union dry when it comes to its finances. Okay, so it's about reading comprehension and connecting things that you learned about in class, but not super specific. Okay, that's not a super specific thing to know. Let me give you another example here. Um, this is reading comprehension, right? This is Ataturk's fashion police. Okay, when Kemal Ataturk took over Turkey in the 1920s, he also wanted to modernize, westernize, and industrialize Turkey. If you're westernizing a country, okay, that means you're importing European and American culture. Sometimes you're forcing that culture on your people, which that calls into question freedom of speech, I suppose, right? Freedom of expression. But this source here talks about how he made some traditional Turkish attire um, illegal, right? And that kind of made the conservative population, the old school population of Turkey, a little bit upset. But look at number 21 here. It says, according to this article, the goal of Ataturk's reforms was to, right? This is just basically a straight up reading comprehension type of system here, or reading comprehension type of question. Modernized Turkey in the image of European nations is just code for copying European culture, right? By making people look more European. How do I know this? There's that term, Westernization or Western style. It's about connections, right? You gotta, it's a good side note here, right? Westernize means be more European. So it's less about specific people, because it didn't ask me in this, like, think about that, right? It didn't ask me in this document here, like, oh, who was the person who did all these things in Turkey, right? They gave you the guy in the source, and that's usually going to be the case. So I personally will not get caught up in trying to memorize people. Try to memorize, or not, maybe not memorize, but try to recognize the cause and effect relationships. Work on vocabulary, work on reading comprehension. The best way to do that, and I know time is, it's crunch mode now, crunch time, right? You guys probably, at least in my school, we still had school today, right? And this Regents is tomorrow, and you're probably thinking, oh man, I got to scramble now to study. Even though it's lengthy and requires a lot of effort, watch the old videos, okay? Because I go through, when I go through the multiple choice videos, I go through reading the document, trying to help kids understand what the words mean. I would do that. Globalization. Hang on, let me just take a sip of water here. I'm gonna have to take a quick break in a second, but we could talk. I'm gonna do this as long as I can. Hopefully, at least another hour or so. If you could let me know that this is helping, that would be great. Um, Definitely check out the other videos as well. Globalization means the entire world is connected now through advanced trade, advanced transportation, and advanced communication. Okay, so that means I could talk to somebody around the world. I could buy something from around the world, and that's wonderful in a lot of ways, right? I can get whatever I want from wherever I want. But this also enables corporations to exist globally. Okay. And that means a corporation can go, well, I'm going to do my manufacturing in the place with the lowest labor costs, and where maybe I don't have to treat my employees as nicely. So that factory, making Fender guitars in California, this is a California made one. That's my nice one here. Okay. We don't have to make those in California so much anymore. We're going to open up a factory in Mexico, which is where this one is made. Okay. And we'll pay the workers less money, maybe not treat them so nicely. Okay. And then we'll just, because we have rapid transportation, we'll just sell that guitar back in America and make a higher profit. The person in the US can buy a good guitar at a lower price. Okay. But again, that creates other issues, right? That means that person making guitars in California might have been laid off. It also means that the person in Mexico might have gotten a job, but are they being treated nicely? These are the issues associated with globalization. Never mind the fact that if people are trading and traveling rapidly all over the world all the time, that puts a lot of pressure on the environment as well. Okay, so globalization, both good and potentially negative, it could be an enduring issue. Sometimes you might think of the word maybe interconnectivity as an enduring issue. Okay, because it's great that we could trade and travel and communicate rapidly, but it does have its negative side effects. Treaty of Versailles. I'd be happy to talk about the Treaty of Versailles. I'm just going to take a literally, guys, a 30-second break. If you could just bear with me for 30 seconds, I will be right back. Just got to use the bathroom, just to be open and honest. All right, I'll be right back in 2 seconds. All right, thanks for that. I am back. I believe somebody asked me about the Treaty of Versailles, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit. All right, so Treaty of Versailles is something to absolutely know for this region because the Treaty of Versailles did a lot of damage to a lot of places. Okay, so let's focus on what it ended, right? It ended World War One and it punished Germany. I'm not going to write down every punishment right now, okay? But Germany was forced to accept full blame for World War One. It forced Germany to pay reparations. That was a huge one. It reduced the size of the German military. It took away Germany's air force. It took away Germany's submarines. Okay, and that is going to lead to tough times for Germany. It's going to lead to the hunt for a scapegoat, and it's going to give rise to radical groups like the Nazis who blame the Jews for all these things. And then you, of course, eventually get to World War II. All right, and so that is not great, but you also have some other side effects from the Treaty of Versailles as well, because the Treaty of Versailles also turned Ottoman territory into mandates. Mandates, think of a mandate as like a temporary colony. Okay, so the British and the French, they roll into the Ottoman Empire, their territories aside from what became modern day Turkey. And they said, okay, this chunk is mine. This is going to be Palestine. This chunk is mine. It's going to be Iraq. When they redrew the map of the Middle East, they put groups of people together who did not necessarily like each other. So, like what happened with the Berlin Conference in Africa, the redrawing of the map would later cause ethnic and religious conflict in the Middle East. And the British, in particular, would rule Palestine as a mandate. And they made the mistake of promising both the Arabs there and the Jews there that one day they can have a state of their own in that region. And so eventually you get to the division plan. Neither side is happy, and you get conflict in that part of the world that persists to this day. But I don't want to dig too much into that. I don't want to risk making too many people upset. That's not what we're here for right now. So the Middle East is impacted by the Treaty of Versailles. Europe is impacted by the Treaty of Versailles, okay, because it gave people in Europe self determination. Someone also asked me if they're still here about Yugoslavia. Okay, so if you look at why World War One started, Slavic people, which is like an ethnic group that lived in parts of Europe, they didn't have a country of their own, and they wanted that. And they were upset that Austria took over Bosnia, where a lot of Slavic people lived. And so the Slavs were upset about that, and that's why a Slavic guy from Serbia assassinated the Archduke. Okay, because Slavic people wanted control over their own lands. They wanted to rule them as they saw fit, which is what self determination means. And they thought Austria was getting in the way of that. So they killed the Archduke. And so World War One starts. So when the war is over, Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. president, goes, you know what? You know what we should do? We should give all groups in Europe self-determination, the right to rule themselves without interference. So what do? They redraw the map of Europe. They make a Poland. They make a Yugoslavia for Slavic people, and they figured that would solve all the problems. But it's hard to redraw a map of Europe and go, okay, whoever's in this circle, those are definitely all going to be Slavic people. It'll be fine. They'll all be the same. They'll all get along. That wasn't the case. You fast forward to the 1990s, Yugoslavia is torn apart and genocide happens there. It was kind of a hot mess. And so they try to give people of Europe self determination, but they don't give it to the peoples of Asia. Okay, so Ho Chi Minh in particular, he comes up on the reasons a lot. Communist leader of Vietnam, he wanted self determination for the Vietnamese who had been ruled by the French, and they kind of ignored that. Okay, and that kind of sets Vietnam down the path of nationalism and desire for independence. So, my goodness, does the Treaty of Versailles have an impact on world history? And you can make a case that it still has had an impact on world history. All right, so hopefully that helps those of you who asked me about Yugoslavia and the Treaty of Versailles. Tennis court oath, that's a minor event in the French Revolution, okay? But basically, members of the third estate, like the intellectual part of the third estate, the bourgeoisie, if you will, uh, representatives of the bourgeoisie get together on a tennis court because they were locked out of their meeting house, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna continue to meet until we create a constitution that's good for this country." Okay, in which we're going to limit the power of the king. It's an early phase of the French Revolution. Remember that the members of the Third Estate who were looking to make changes, they call themselves the National Assembly, and they start making laws on behalf of the French people and basically challenging the king to stop them. They storm the Bastille looking for gunpowder, and changes happen. France becomes a republic for a while early in the French Revolution. I wish I could help you guys with U.S. history. People ask me that all the time, guys. I've never really taught U.S. history, so it's not my forte, and I would not do a good job preparing you for U.S. history regents. I'm sure there are people on YouTube doing that. I hope so. I do. I've been told that I will be teaching U.S. history in the future, but not for a couple of years. So I'm sorry that I can't help with that. I wish I could. Believe me, I wish I could. And I'm sure if you gave me the U.S. history regions, I could pass it, but that doesn't mean I'm enough of an expert to really dig into the details. Chris Schreiber, welcome, welcome. Let's go Islanders. Um, Enlightenment. Let's talk about some Enlightenment stuff. I think that's a great idea because you're not going to get a French Revolution without the Enlightenment. So let me take some notes. Let me just make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is inspired by a couple of things. Okay, so let's start with that. Sometimes it might be worth knowing the historical circumstances for events, which is code for causes. I'd put inspired by absolutism and the scientific revolution. My spelling and grammar is not going to be perfect right now. I'm trying to go really quickly. The chat is bustling, which is great. I hope you guys can help each other out too, instead of just asking me. That's part of the reason why I like doing this. Absolutism is rule by one, okay? And typically, when it's absolutism, people's rights are oppressed. During the scientific revolution, old ideas like that were challenged. And so you get people saying, I don't know, maybe it's not right that the Earth is being taught as being the center of the solar system. We're going to question that idea and we're going to test it out for ourselves and come up with the truth about things or how things should be taught or studied. And so we apply that during the Enlightenment to like society. Like, hey, I'm going to question absolutism. It doesn't seem to be working perfectly. It doesn't seem to be benefiting everyone in society, only maybe a few at the top. So if absolutism isn't working, why don't we just surround that leader with other branches of government so that power can be checked? Okay, so then you get your Montesquieu coming up with separation of powers. Montesquieu, Montesquieu equals separation of powers. I like to think, and I teach my kids, Montesquieu's got a three-syllable last name, so he implements the idea of three branches of government. So again, I'm going to question absolutism. I'm going to say, you know what, absolutism isn't great. Let's come up with a new plan, right? And that directly leads to the United States Constitution, which we have separation of powers here. Okay, most importantly, probably John Locke. He comes up on the Regents a lot. All people born, I shouldn't say all people, I should say all men, and I'll say why later, born with natural rights, life, liberty, property. I'm not going to type everything out here, but he also said, and this is probably the most important part with John Locke, is that John Locke said that if a government is denying you, excuse me, your natural rights, you should have a responsibility to overthrow that government and bring about a government that does protect your natural rights. So that would inspire people in the Americas. Thomas Jefferson, when he says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, he's basically reiterating John Locke's ideas. Okay, it inspires the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, Simon Bolivar liberating South America, all kind of inspired by John Locke. But remember, I said all men, so it's worth knowing Mary Wollstonecraft because she basically says, "Hey, like, how about the women?" Okay, so rights for women, including education. He says if women are going to be participating in a, she says if women are going to be participating in a democracy, they should get proper schooling, right? Because how can I vote for a political leader and understand their positions on things if I can't read them? How am I supposed to vote on a law if I don't know what the law means? Because I can't read the law when I go into the voting booth and I get that Scantron thing, right? So she wants women's rights. That helps, and an important part of this is that helps lead to women's suffrage, the women's suffrage movement. Right? Please know that the word suffrage, guys, means the right to vote. That's a really important word to know for the regents. So we got Montesquieu, we got John Locke, we have Rousseau. And Rousseau is known for the social contract. And this is probably one of the more confusing things for the Enlightenment era. Okay, social contract from Rousseau's perspective. There's another Enlightenment philosopher who thinks of it differently, but we'll worry about Rousseau for now. He thinks the people as a whole, as a collective whole, should come together and form a democratic government where rights are protected. Simple. But that group of people should also come together and say, hey, we should protect rights as long as those rights don't hurt somebody else. And we should have a conversation about that idea as a whole. What do I mean by that? Is that the people as a whole in a democratic society like ours came to the conclusion that freedom of speech should be protected as a fundamental right. But sometimes we have to limit the freedom of speech. And these are things that are always open and discussed in places like the Supreme Court, right? There are certain times where my speech is not protected, for example. So all that goes with the social contract idea. You probably also want to know, I'll just do one more. Voltaire is your classic freedom of speech and religion guy. Maybe think of the V as voice, right? Freedom of speech, voice, if you will. Again, when I'm talking and taking notes, I'm not able to monitor the chat so much. Usually the first question or two on the regions, almost reading comp. I'm assuming you mean the Enlightenment. Chinese communism. I'd be happy to talk about Chinese communism. All right, let me set up a new piece of notes here. Communism in China. Okay, I think we can go back to the Treaty of Versailles again. Why not? I'll tell you why in a second. So, Treaty of Versailles equals protests in China, and this is often called the May 4th movement. So, Star Wars Day, if you will, in 1919. Okay, so remember your era of imperialism. Japan has become an imperial power. Germany is an imperial power by this point. Germany owned a little bit of land in China and controlled it directly. I'm forgetting specifically what that was. You guys don't need to know that kind of specific detail. The big main idea you do need to know is China thought, okay, we participated in World War One. We helped the Allies. Granted, their role was probably minimum, but they said, wouldn't it be fair if we got our land back that Germany controlled, right? Because remember, Germany lost its overseas colonies with the Treaty of Versailles. I should have said that before. So China does not get its land back. The Allied powers said, you know what, we're going to give that part of China to Japan. So people in China are upset about that because they think the Treaty of Versailles is punishing them. They think the West is out to get them, and Western philosophy is not something that China should pursue. So you can make a case that this turns China down the anti-Western path. So who else are you going to turn to for help? Maybe communism, because the Soviet Union is being born at this time, right? And they might end up being a powerful ally, right? So you can make a case that Mao Zedong comes out of this movement. Mao Zedong equals communist leader. I might know the word Marxist. Okay, a Marxist is somebody who supports the ideas of Karl Marx, a communist philosopher, right, who basically said there should be no private property. There needs to be a classless society. There needs to be the proletariat should overthrow the rich, the bourgeoisie, and then create that classless society where things are shared equally, and society should work collectively as a whole for the betterment of society as a whole. Okay, and that doesn't typically work out according to plan when these societies come about. But anyway, Mao Zedong wants communism, but there's a group in China who don't want communism, as is often the case. Okay, so a civil war happens in China. So we'll put that down, civil war, which ended in late 1940s. Okay, the nationalists, who were the anti-communists in China, they retreat to the island of Taiwan and set up a government there. And that does connect to literally right now, because ever since then, China said, well, China was part of Vietnam, and one day we're going to take that back because we don't like the fact that Taiwan kind of broke away from Chinese control during the Civil War. And people are nervous about that. That's why a lot of companies in Taiwan are setting up factories elsewhere. For example, all your iPhones have chips made by TSMC, the Taiwanese Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, is what I believe that stands for. And TSMC is like getting nervous about China, so they're setting up factories in places like India, Vietnam, even in the United States to make those iPhone chips. Anyway, China becomes communist in 1949. They pursue the Stalin path, 5-year plans, collectivization of agriculture. China calls these things the Great Leap Forward. They kind of fail. Mao Zedong thinks people are sabotaging communism and criticizing his rule. So he begins the Cultural Revolution to purge the disloyal. And that really screws up China. So Deng Xiaoping comes in and tries to clean up the mess by bringing in some free market reforms, just like Gorbachev brought in free market reforms in the Soviet Union. That was a lot of stuff right there. Hopefully that helped. Let me try to pick up some stuff in the chat here. 5-year plans. Great question. Okay, nice simple question. It's basically because in communism, the government controls the economy. I'll just give you a couple of things here. 5-year plans equals government sets goals to increase industrialization, often prioritizes heavy industry as opposed to consumer goods. So what does that mean? That means, remember, in communism, the government runs the farms and the factories. And typically, if that's the case, the government is going to want to prioritize things that would help the country as a whole or help the government stay in power. So I I'm not going to have my factories produce amazing button-down t-shirts, right, that you can get at Target. No, we're going to prioritize making electricity, coal, tanks, weapons, right? Because that's good for the country, not, a person looking to be stylistic. Because also, too, in communism, right? If I have the super cool Dunder Mifflin shirt and somebody else doesn't, that's social classes, right? So we can't have that. So let's just not make anything cool looking to avoid class distinction. So let's prioritize the heavy industry and not care about the consumer goods, meaning the stuff that we can buy in the store. And so the government sets these goals, and the priority is, again, industrialization. And typically in the Soviet Union and in communist China, they succeed to some extent when it comes to their emphasis on industrialization. If it didn't, then the Soviet Union would not be such a threat to us during the Cold War. There's a lot involved with the Cold War. It's kind of hard to cover maybe all of it right now. So please definitely check out my videos because there's a lot of questions on the Reaches about the Cold War topics. You can always, guys, if you don't know, like YouTube's pretty cool now with like having the transcripts inside the videos. So if you pop on one of my multiple choice videos and open up the transcript and just search for the term Cold War, if I don't mention the Cold War in that video, just skip it and go to a different video, or go to the part of the video where I talk about the Cold War. Maybe that'll help you, because whenever I do multiple choice videos, I give the backstory before I go over the questions. All right, but so I'm not even gonna do like notes on the Cold War right now, but I could talk about it. Okay, it's the era of competition between the Soviet Union and the United States. Who could build the most nuclear bombs? Who could build the best nuclear bombs? Who could put a person on the moon first? Who could win gold medal at the Olympics? Who could spread their influence to newly independent countries in Africa and Asia? Okay, they both create military alliances. We're part of NATO. They made the Warsaw Pact. Stalin has satellite nations in Eastern Europe that he forced to become communist. The Berlin airlift, proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam and Afghanistan. These are all things that could come up on the Regents. Somebody just asked about Mensheviks. I'd be floored if you got any kind of a question where you needed to know about the Mensheviks. Bolsheviks, sure. The Bolsheviks were the radicals of Russia who wanted Russia to become communist. Vladimir Lenin was the leader of the Bolsheviks. Okay, the Mensheviks were a less radical group who wanted to kind of implement more democracy and more gradual change away from the czar, kind of turn Russia into like a constitutional monarchy where the czar had to share power with the legislative group. But the Bolsheviks were more radical, and since Russia was a big fat mess, when a country is in a hot mess of a situation and people are desperate, they often turn to radical ideas like communism. India comes up a lot. I would say there's a good bet that India could come up. Of course, now that I say that, it might not. I think kids often think that teachers do get early access to the regions. I wish, but no, I do not get to see the exam until you guys get to see the exam. Everyone across the state is going to be taking it tomorrow afternoon. We talked about Iran earlier in the video, so you should be able to go back, or and we can and you could check that out. We covered Iran. We covered Turkey already. Iran, what you need to know is the 1979 Islamic Revolution, where they turned Iran back into being a theocracy. Women not so happy about this because their rights are were repressed a bit when they're forced to be a little bit more old school again when it comes to covering the hair out in public. No more democracy. Iran governed by the Ayatollahs, who are religious leaders. And there's other stuff with Iran that kind of connects to what's going on there right now. They started developing a nuclear program under the rule of the Shah, and people criticized that because it's like, wait, you're a country with all this oil. Do you really need to develop nuclear technology? And they said it's just for electricity. We think that it was for developing a bomb, and that helps usher in our tensions with that place today. Most significant Indian events to know. I would say the arrival of the East India Company in the late 1700s is an important thing because that begins the process of British imperialism. Amritsar massacre is right after World War One, and that kind of convinces the people of India that they needed to be more nationalistic and independent. 1947, important for India because that's when independence happens, but it's not just independence. It's okay, Hindus and Muslims have a long history of conflict. Gandhi could not keep the groups together, and so they partitioned India into India and Pakistan, thinking that would solve conflict. It just led to more conflict, as it often does, I suppose. Neither side's happy with the situation. Dividing up Palestine, for example, did not lead to either Arabs or Jews being happy with that either. The late 1990s for India also important because both India and Pakistan, I believe in 1998, tested nuclear weapons. And since they don't like each other and they share a border and they both actively compete over control of Kashmir in northern India, that makes their particular nuclear tension especially scary. People sometimes call there are clickbaity videos on YouTube that'll say the most dangerous place on earth or the most dangerous border on earth, and they'll say Kashmir is that. You'll see that for like Kashmir or for the DMZ separating North Korea and South Korea. Both pretty scary places. Oh, it's kind of hard to do a quick review of 1900 to 2000 because that's basically all the 10th grade that you need to know. So that's a little bit ambitious for a live stream. But like little specific things, Tokugawa Shogunate, sure. Let's talk about the Tokugawa Shogunate. I love talking about Japan. Okay, actually, discussed this, I believe, in my last multiple choice video. The Regents loves to start with the World in 1750 unit. Okay, the first couple of questions. And let me see really quickly this if I have this old Regents exam from 2019, if there's a Tokugawa question on here. If there is, there's one in the beginning. This one does not have a Tokugawa question. Okay, but many of them do. So let me get back to OBS here for a second. And let's just take some notes about what you should know about the Tokugawa shogunate, because they love to compare the Tokugawa shogunate to absolutism in France. So I'll put Tokugawa shogunate. The shogun is the person with all the power, the real power in Japan. There was still an emperor, but the emperor of Japan kind of acted like the king of England today. So person, I should say, person with the real power. They were military leaders. We have the daimyo, who were the wealthy landowners of Japan. And if you go back to Japan in medieval times, these daimyo, not only were they wealthy landowners, they governed areas of Japan independently. Okay, the shogun of the Tokugawa period is looking to take power away from those wealthy landowners. He wanted to be the man that ruled over everything. Okay, and so what the shogun did was required the daimyo to live in the capital city of Edo, I believe, every other year. I think every other year was the requirement of the alternate attendance system. Maybe you remember that from your Regents Review stuff. Okay, because if you can keep the rich people who might be considered a threat to you close by, you can keep watch over them and make sure they're not doing anything to challenge your authority. Right? People were concerned back then that the wealthy would be off somewhere in the countryside, and it's harder to get places in the 1800s. It's hard to spy on people if you can't get to them or listen to them because modern technology wasn't there. So people were afraid for a long time in history that the wealthy would be off in the countryside, raising money, hiring soldiers, making weapons, and then trying to overthrow the government. So if you can force your nobility to live in the capital city oftentimes or every other year, that's going to be hard because it's hard to plot a revolution if eyes are on you. And if you have two homes, you don't really have the money like you used to. Okay, so when the shogun gets a little bit more power and able to boss around the daimyo, okay, and this corresponds with the shogun being able to get gunpowder weapons from the Portuguese. There's a lot of backstory involved here, but this is the main idea. And you should also know that they love to compare this to King Louis XIV in France at Versailles, right? Who basically forced the nobility. This was in January 2026. This treaty, this Versailles stuff, okay, forcing the nobility to go and live in the palace means that Louis can keep watch over the nobles of France. Okay, and kind of turns it into like a cool thing to do. Like, hey, I'm not going to rebel against the king. I'm going to hang out with the king. The king's throwing parties, right? If I get to hang out with the king, that's like a ticket to fame. Okay. Aung San Suu Kyi, she doesn't come up on the regions really anymore. I haven't seen her in a while. Okay, this was a person who came up for a couple of years because she protested against a military government in Southeast Asia in a place called Myanmar. So she was kind of like celebrated as a hero for trying to bring democracy to a place that did not have it and was fighting for human rights. But when she was released and had some power, some human rights violations actually happened in Myanmar, and her reputation kind of took a big tumble, and people don't really talk about her as much anymore. And plus, too, that the military government took full control over Myanmar again, and she went back to being on house arrest, so she doesn't even have any power anymore. So she hasn't come up in a while. I personally would not be so consumed by trying to study Aung San Suu Kyi stuff. Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge, Cambodia, communism, ethnic cleansing, human rights violations at the same time as the Vietnam War. Those are the big things. Ho Chi Minh, Vietnamese leader, nationalist, communist, wanted to kick out the French and later the Americans out of Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh was not happy with the division that was made in Vietnam after World War II. So North Vietnam tries to reunite all of Vietnam under a communist government. America says no because containment. And so the Vietnamese, after kicking out the French, kick out. They fight up to kick out the Americans, right? They fight a guerrilla war, hard war for the Americans. They pull out in 1973, and by 1975, Vietnam becomes a fully united communist country. And you'd think that would poison that would like hurt relations between us and them, and for a while they did. But since then, Vietnam has become one of our biggest trading partners in Asia. If you look at your AirPods case, I'll prove it to you. Let me pull up mine. A lot of AirPods now are made in Vietnam. Does it say where mine were made? Okay, I have AirPods Pro 2, and mine were assembled in China. If you have a set of threes, check them because it might say Vietnam. Your Nike sneakers highly likely were made in Vietnam. So we have trade with that country now. Rwanda genocide. We could talk about that. Okay, let me do some notes on Africa for a second. Let's go back to Scramble for Africa. Hang on one second here. Let me just get my. There we go. Beautiful. Scramble for Africa. Okay, so European countries during the era of imperialism want Africa for natural resources and raw materials. Let's put that down. Europe wanted resources, new markets for goods in Africa and elsewhere too, obviously. You might want to also have in the back of your head the white man's burden idea, which goes along with the idea of social Darwinism. Okay, so basically, this is the idea is that when you're talking about social Darwinism, people thought that some groups of humans on the earth are better able to survive. They've adapted, they've industrialized, they've modernized. And the groups that haven't are going to go extinct. They're going to fall behind the times and be beaten out by the stronger groups. So the Europeans were like, okay, we're going to save people from extinction by teaching them how to be more European, okay, because then that'll save them from extinction because they'll be able to compete in the modern world. And that's kind of like a not a maybe a nice way to view the world because you're kind of saying that the European way is the best way, and you know, and not everyone wants to be modern and industrial. Industrialization brought a lot of negative side effects. Not everyone wants that. Okay, so that's one of their justifications for European imperialism is that they're saving Africans and peoples in Asia from extinction. Okay, so where are we here? So all right, so scramble for Africa. So what else with that? The Berlin Conference happens, and that is 100 years. What was that? Yeah, 1884 to 1885. 1884 is fine. Okay, you don't need to know an exact year for the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference is where the European countries set the rules for colonization of Africa slash began redrawing the map of Africa. The Regents loves to put maps of Africa and ask about the Berlin Conference. Like, hey, what was the historical event that led to the division of Africa like you see on this map? Berlin Conference. How does this relate? Well, eventually, we'll say after World War II, European countries start granting independence to former colonies. And that also comes up on the Regents a lot. They love to ask about, someone asked about turning point as a CRQ question. That means you have to identify an event that causes the change that happens between Doc 1 and Doc 2 on a CRQ. So if document number 1 is a map of Africa where the Europeans are in control of everything, and document 2 shows all those places becoming independent, World War II is the turning point because European countries can't hold on to their empires after World War II. They don't have the resources anymore. But the thing is that the lines that they drew don't go away. And so you get Rwanda, which had two ethnic groups, the Hutus, who were the majority, and you get the Tutsis, who were the minority group. Remember, when they redrew the map of Europe, when they redrew the map of Africa at the Berlin Conference, they didn't take into account the natural borders of African peoples. So they often put people together who did not like each other or have a history with each other. So these two groups are forced to live in Rwanda. Belgium goes home and the two groups start going at it. The Belgians showed a lot of preference for the Tutsis, and that caused some resentment among the Hutus. So the Hutus are like, well, Tutsis, you guys worked with the Belgians, therefore you're disloyal, we don't like you, so we're going to come after you. And the Hutus try to exterminate the Tutsis, right? It's an example of genocide. And the United Nations makes a minimum effort to try to stop it. It's kind of like a too little, too late situation. You should definitely do practice regents. Okay, watch all my review videos and follow, download the tests and follow along. See if you could maybe take a test and then watch one of my videos where I go over the test to check yourself. World War One and World War Two, a lot. That would be a lot right now. I could do specific questions, specific events within those for sure. Industrial Revolution is the transition of making things by hand to making things by machines inside of factories. And when you start making things in factories, that changes things up. That means I commute to work instead of working on the farm in my backyard. That means I'm starting to pollute the air. That means people start pouring into cities and you get urbanization and you get pollution. You get the great stink of London. You get the outbreak of cholera. All those things. Poor working conditions, low wages, rise of labor unions, rise of communism as an idea to try to fix the Industrial Revolution's problems. Russian Revolution. A lot of people are asking me about the Russian Revolution. So, since a lot of people are asking me about it, let's talk about it a little bit. So, let's do Russia before communism first equals led by a czar, which is a Russian word for Caesar, okay, showing a lasting Roman influence. What's up, ninth grade social studies? By the way, don't worry about ninth grade stuff for the regents. But PSA, guys, you are allowed. Let's make this clear right now. On the enduring issues essay, if you bring in ninth grade world history as part of your outside information, you're allowed. You can use United States history on the enduring issues essay. It's allowed. Personal experiences or the experiences of your relatives on the enduring issues essay for outside information. It's allowed. Okay, so please remember that. You can write about these things on the enduring issues essay. I just wanted to make that clear. If you don't believe me, check out the answer keys on the state website. They often give example essays that got good grades, and oftentimes kids write about these things if they're able to do so. So anyway, Russia was led by a czar who had absolute power. You probably want to go, if you're interested in looking at a Russian Revolution question, check out June 2019. I have a video about that regions, and the first couple of questions have some really tough stuff about the Russian Revolution in there. So led by a czar with absolute power, and Russia was, let's say, behind the times when it comes to industrialization. How can we prove that? They lost a war to Japan, right? The biggest country in the world lost a war to a tiny country made up of a series of islands. Japan was industrialized by this point in 1904 because of the Meiji Restoration. That's the Russo-Japanese War. And so people are thinking, okay, the czar's leadership stinks because a lot of the world is becoming democratic and we've got an absolute monarch who's claiming divine right to rule. The country is behind the times when it comes to industry. They're trying to industrialize. And so part of the beginnings of industrialization means some of the worst stuff associated with industrialization, right? The poor working conditions, the low pay, etc. So working conditions are bad. Russia's losing wars. Russia gets involved in World War One, and Russia was not ready for it. Even before that, you have your whole Bloody Sunday situation, right? A bunch of peaceful protesters go to the Tsar's Winter Palace and say, "Hey, Tsar, we would like some changes, please. We want some democracy, please." And some of those people died during that protest. So people are unhappy with the Tsar because of that. And then during World War One, Russia quits World War One because the Bolsheviks rise to power and start governing Russia as a communist country. People asking about enduring issues, check out my enduring issues videos because in the description to those, I have a link to a bunch of enduring issues that come up on the regions a lot. You won't get, there's like no reference table for the global history regions. Like Earth science, they give you like a reference table. You won't get a list of enduring issues to choose from tomorrow on the exam. It's worth having a couple of examples in the back of your head. Belgian Congo. I'd be happy to talk about that. Let's go back to Africa for a second. The scramble for Africa, we mentioned Rwanda. Okay, so Belgium took over the Congo region. Okay, this is like the rainforest, like the middle of Africa. They wanted rubber from that part of Africa, okay, because rubber is an essential part of the Industrial Revolution. How can you have bike tires and car tires or assembly lines or machines without rubber belts? You just can't. Okay, so you have to go to rubber trees and get the sap out of the rubber tree. I think you have to add like some kind of sulfur to that sap to make what they call vulcanized rubber. Charles Goodyear is the guy who invented that. Do you need to know that for the regions? No, I just like that kind of story. So the Belgians took over the Congo. King Leopold kind of just owned the Congo as his personal property, which is okay. And so, why do we care about this? Well, the Congolese were badly mistreated by the Belgians. If they did not collect enough rubber, they would have their hands or feet cut off. And there are very famous photographs of this. In fact, those photographs are, an important way that we deal with enduring issues, right? Issues come to light because often of photography and social media. Without knowledge of these things, we can't fix them. So if you write about the impact of photography as a way to deal with enduring issues, that could be cool for an enduring issues essay. So the photos come out of the atrocities, and that puts pressure on Belgium to kick out King Leopold. And even though the Congolese did not get their independence, at least the most horrible of the abuses stopped after the world saw just how horrible those people were being treated by the Belgians. Should evidence beyond documents be used before or after you write a summary of the document? It depends. Matt Bialik, what's up, bud? It depends. If your evidence beyond the documents is historical circumstances, right, that might help you tell the before part of the story. Every situation is going to be a little bit different. Outside information can be historical circumstances, right? The lead up, it could be specific facts, pardon me, related to the document or specific people or effects of the document. One way you can kind of think of outside information is maybe you could write about the before the document and then summarize the document. And then if you can, talk about effects of the document, right? That might be a logical way to go about it. But every situation is going to be a little bit different because if you don't know effects of the document, you really can't follow that formula. No, the rubber is definitely between Belgium and the Congo. Not a situation with India. Don't worry about the open door policy. That's more of a U.S. history thing. Okay, but basically to kind of connect it to world history a little bit, China was carved into spheres of influence after the Opium War, but America wanted to secure trading rights with China as well, and so they kind of implement the open door policy to make sure that America could continue trading with all parts of China. But don't worry about the open door policy for the regions. Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, good to know for capitalism. Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels for the Communist Manifesto. Glasnost and Perestroika. Okay, so these are two policies implemented. Let's talk about the fall of the Soviet Union. Why not? Since we're mentioning those things, we can do that. Fall of the USSR. So we could say economy was being drained by invasion of Afghanistan and competing with the US during the arms race. Okay, so that's problematic, and the inefficiencies of communism are kind of are showing themselves a little bit. We don't have to get into all the nitty gritty details there, but typically when you lack a profit motive, maybe the incentive to work hard is just not there, and the society is not producing enough stuff. Oftentimes there are shortages when it comes to consumer goods because the factories are not prioritizing what people want or need. Kind of inefficient. Okay, so we'll just say the economy was bad. So Gorbachev takes over in 1985 and is looking to solve the problems of the Soviet Union. So he implements glasnost, which means openness, right? That just means freedom of speech is allowed and protest, okay? Because he kind of figures if the country's going to solve its problems, people have to openly discuss them, right? If people were always living in fear of being arrested for speaking out against communism, um, then problems aren't brought to light. Problems need to be openly discussed before they can be solved. So he figures, okay, let's let people talk about problems. Let's let people protest, thinking that would help solve the problem of, you know, fixing the Soviet Union. But if everyone starts protesting, maybe it's hard to kind of hold on to power. And people start learning about some of the most horrific things that the government did, like keeping the Chernobyl explosion a secret. And people did not really appreciate that. Perestroika is, just to kind of keep it simple, a little capitalism in the USSR. Sometimes you might see this expressed as free market reforms. If you give some people the ability to run their own business and seek a profit, they're probably going to do whatever they can to produce a product that people actually want to buy and enough of it. Okay. Um, think about Nintendo. Nintendo knew that the Switch was a big seller, so when they came out with Switch 2, before they did that, they made as many of those things as they could to kind of satisfy the demand for Switch 2. Okay, that's efficient business thinking, if you will. So, Glasnost and Perestroika meant to solve the problems of the Soviet Union, but would actually contribute to the end of communism in the Soviet Union. By 1991, the Soviet Union is gone, and you're just left with Russia. Okay, and the satellite states start becoming more democratic. Parts of the Soviet Union itself declare independence, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania become independent. What else? Kazakhstan becomes independent, Uzbekistan, etc. Back to the chat. When I'm typing notes, I'm not seeing the chat. I apologize for that. I could probably go. We've been at this for a while. I already lost track of time. A little over an hour and 20 minutes or so. If you guys can, hopefully you guys can see me okay and hear me okay. I haven't checked in on that in a while. I don't have the best internet here. I just covered Glassnode, so let's not spam the stream. I would appreciate that. Um, I could probably go to maybe roughly 6:30 or so. You guys can always go back and rewatch this after the fact. I think you can actually rewind now. I think I enabled that DVR mode. Again, live streaming, not not something I'm that good at. Social Darwinism I just covered. Okay, just to go back for a second to my notes on social Darwinism, is the idea that some groups are better able to adapt to a modern society, and the ones that cannot adapt are going to go extinct. Okay, and this kind of justifies European expansion and imperialism in Africa, because they thought, okay, it's the responsibility of the quote unquote white man to bring European ways to those who are at risk of extinction. Okay, so it's less about species and survival of the fittest. It's about human groups and survival of the fittest. And some people thought that the Europeans were best. The Europeans thought, I guess, were best fit to survive. So they gotta teach European ways around the world. How could I most definitely get questions correct that ask for claim or point of view? Point of view is author's opinion. I think that's the best way to kind of think about that. Also talked about the Berlin Conference earlier. Yes, and those notes are right there for you. Japan. We also covered Japan a bit earlier. I can't repeat myself too much for the sake of time. 5-year plans. You associate 5-year plans with Stalin, not Vladimir Lenin. Stalin's the guy who brings in hardcore rapid industrialization of the Soviet Union. Charles Darwin, nope, not on the Regents. Nope, 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 nope. Don't worry about that. No Charles Darwin on the Regents. Social Darwinism kind of is just another take on Charles Darwin's evolution of species idea, but you don't need to know that name, Charles Darwin, for the Regents. Don't worry about that. Science Regents, that could be different, but I don't I know nothing about what's on the Science Regents exams. New economic policy. I'd be happy to go over the NEP. All right, so let's go and let's do some notes here. We could say Russia under Lenin and Stalin. We'll do Lenin first. Okay, so Lenin brought communism to Russia, and it's transformed into the Soviet Union. USSR is Soviet Union. Used a secret police to maintain authority. You might want to call this an example of totalitarian control over people. He is a guy who is practical. And when he begins the process of implementing communism, he was recognizing that the economy was maybe not doing so great when the government tries to run all aspects of the economy. So he backtracks from communism for a while, and the NEP is the new economic policy or plan, which again brought in some free market reforms to try to get the economy moving, give people a profit motive, and maybe they'll produce more stuff. Give farmers the ability to sell their surplus goods, maybe they'll grow more food, and that would help the country overall. Stalin comes in after Lenin dies, okay, and I believe 1927, and Stalin transformed the USSR into industrial superpower with the 5-year plans. Collective farming, though, is another story. Okay, collective farming, to try to keep it simple, large government owned farms lived and worked on by the peasants. Right, so when people like Vladimir Lenin promise people peace, land, and bread, that might be worth saying here. Right, without that catchphrase, he would not have gotten all the poor people of Russia on his side, and probably would not have been able to actually win the Russian Revolution, because there was a civil war there for a while. All right, so collectivization of farming means, hey, peasants, I know we said peace, land, and bread, but we didn't say you're going to own that land, because communism, no one owns anything. So you're all going to work on these government-owned farms, and your payment will be whatever food we allow you to keep, because we're going to come every once in a while and take a large portion of what you've grown and distribute it how we see fit throughout the country. And this goes into the whole Ukrainian Holodomor situation. That's a Ukrainian word, pardon me, for famine, an example of a genocide, an ethnic cleansing, a human rights violation, because the people of Ukraine had been independent briefly, okay, after World War One ends. Soviet Union grabs up Ukraine. So Ukrainians who are feeling nationalistic and wanting independence and not wanting to be communists, they resist collectivization. They resisted by killing their livestock and burning the crops. And Stalin's like, I don't think so. If you guys are going to do that, we're going to make sure that you guys have nothing to eat. So Soviet government workers went to Ukraine and just basically took all the food that was available to the Ukrainians. They put a lot of restrictions in place to make sure that Ukrainians were not allowed to leave areas of Ukraine. So they were forced to deal with this starvation. And yeah, a pretty horrific scene during Stalin's era. The Balkans and the Bosnian War. Okay, we talked briefly about that. Okay, so Yugoslavia was, pardon me, is supposed to be a country for Slavic peoples in the Balkan Peninsula. That was made after World War One. But when they drew Yugoslavia, right, they were thinking, okay, everyone in this circle or oval, if you will, was going to be Slavic, so there'll be peace there. But there were many groups who lived in Yugoslavia who are very nationalistic. And when communism ends in Yugoslavia, there was a guy, this Josip Tito guy, was kind of a tough guy who kind of kept the groups in line using brutal means. When he's gone and communism around the world is falling apart, people in Yugoslavia start demanding independence and taking it. And one day Serbia goes, enough's enough. We don't want to see Bosnia break free. And they commit human rights violations in Bosnia against mostly the Muslim population of Bosnia, because they wanted Bosnia to be independent. And then a couple years later, Kosovo, another part of Yugoslavia, does the same thing, and Serbia tries to eliminate them to prevent their efforts at independence. The United Nations unable to solve this problem, so NATO bombing of Serbia is what ended those Bosnian wars and the conflicts in Yugoslavia. That comes up sometimes. Sometimes, and these are hard. They like to ask about the leader of Serbia who committed the human rights violations during the 1990s. And that's a guy named Slobodan Milosevic. I believe that's how it's pronounced. So he comes up sometimes. Ottoman Empire and Gandhi, we spent some time on already. So you can backtrack later on. Pearl Harbor, don't worry about Pearl Harbor so much. Just know that it brought the U.S. into World War II, okay, and maybe a justification for using the atomic bombs on Japan. Tokugawa, we already covered the Tokugawa Shogunate. Feel free to backtrack later. CRQ, check out my CRQ videos. I've gone over basically every CRQ since June 2019 that's been given. So you can see every type of question if you do that. If you do that, historical circumstances, point of view, bias, intended audience, cause and effect, similarity, difference, turning point. Those are your question types. Desmond Tutu. I haven't seen Desmond Tutu in a long time on the Regents. But Desmond Tutu, you associate with South Africa, and he's a guy that kept telling the world how bad apartheid was and told the world, hey, if you boycott South Africa, we can help end apartheid. He was a Catholic priest, a bishop. He was a clergy member in the Catholic Church in South Africa who encouraged the worldwide boycott of South Africa to get the end of apartheid to happen. Simon Bolivar. Okay, Simon Bolivar was a person from South Africa who wanted South Africa. Sorry, did I just say South Africa? That's a common mistake. Let's restart. Simon Bolivar, a guy of Spanish descent in South America who wanted South America to be liberated from Spain and fought alongside people like Jose de San Martin to liberate South America. Not Brazil, that was Portuguese controlled, but the rest of South America was fought for. They fought for the rest of South America to be liberated from Spain, and succeeded. Okay, so that's an important part of the story. But he was also a nationalist leader. And what the Regents likes to ask about Simon Bolivar when it comes to nationalism is how come Simon Bolivar could not achieve his nationalistic goal of unity in South America? He wanted a United States of South America where the South Americans would be one country. But due to cultural differences, linguistic differences, geographic barriers, making it hard to communicate between all parts of South America, it never happens. So instead of one South America, you get independent states in South America. States in this context meaning countries. Someone asked me about Toussaint Louverture. He's a guy inspired by the Enlightenment. He was a former slave in Haiti, which was a French colony. The slaves were being mistreated. He was inspired by the Enlightenment principles of John Locke and launched a slave insurrection in Haiti, eventually turning Haiti into an independent republic in 1804. Hard to know how long to take on each section. I think if you don't allow yourself at least an hour for the enduring issues essay, you're gonna have a hard time. Sometimes kids ask me, where do I start? What should I do first? The essay, the multiple choice, or the CRQ? I really, 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 truly believe you should start with the multiple choice for two reasons. You can look at how the state grades these things, okay, and you'll see because this is all public information. The multiple choice is worth far, far more than any other part of the test. So do well in the multiple choice, and that will definitely offset a poor essay or poor CRQ. I mean, you want those points. Don't get me wrong. We should get as many points as we can. Hey, Madison. But you want to spend time making sure the multiple choice is good, and when you do that first, you're gonna read a bunch of documents. Your mind is going to remember a lot of things after you read those things. Let me rephrase that. You're going to remember a lot of content if you have to read those documents first. So you're going to go into the enduring issues essay, and maybe you'll have some good ideas about outside information. We spent a lot of time on the Enlightenment already, so go back when the stream is over and definitely review all that. Again, definitely check out all my videos. YouTube's awesome because you could pop open one of my multiple choice videos and search the transcript for Enlightenment and just go right to the part of the video where I talk about that stuff. Enlightenment does come up a lot on the Regents. For the enduring issues essay, should the first two bodies be what you got from the documents? Okay, so pop open any of my enduring issues videos and look at the descriptions. I put a link to like how I teach the kids how to write the enduring issues essay, some basic notes. I think introduction paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph. Body paragraphs, 1 for each document you're using. Okay, because remember, you have to choose 1 issue and write about 3 documents that have that 1 issue in common. So body paragraphs for each document, which means like a document summary, and hopefully weaving in some outside information. Your conclusion paragraph, okay? I think the conclusion paragraph in this essay should be something you spend some time on. If you look at, let me show you why. Okay, hold on one second. Let me pull up my regents I have here for a second. So if you look at the essay task, if you've never seen this, now is the time. Now is the time to review it. Enduring Issues essay task. If you look at the bottom here, it says how the issue. Let me just make sure you guys can see this. Hang on. Hopefully you can. Yeah. If you look, how the issue has affected people or has been affected by people, that'll largely come in your document summary, where you should explain the negative impacts of the issue. That's an important thing. If an issue means a problem, make sure you're talking about the negative effects that this problem has had on people. But look here, how the issue has continued to be an issue or has changed over time. So in your conclusion, I would make an attempt to do one of two things, if not both. Try to connect the enduring issue to something going on in the world right now. Okay, there's conflict in the world right now. There's migration happening in the world right now. Things are scarce in the world right now, right? Think about oil, right? You can write about those things. If you can't, try to talk about what the world has done to change the problem. I hate the way they word this, because what this really means is, what has the world done, or what have people done, or what have groups of people done to try to make the problem less of a problem. Somebody asked me about Desmond Tutu before. What does Desmond Tutu do to solve the enduring issue of inequality? He encourages a worldwide boycott of South African products, right? That's the thing that people do in this world, right? Oh, we're not happy with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, put sanctions on Russia. We don't like that Iran has nuclear technology, or North Korea has nuclear technology, put sanctions on those countries, right? We don't like that Cuba became communist in 1959, put an embargo on Cuba. Don't trade with it. Maybe that'll punish the government enough that they make changes. Okay, so those are the kinds of things. United Nations, something we create to try to prevent human rights violations. Nuremberg trials held after World War II to begin the process of trying to hold world leaders accountable for their human rights violations, their actions there. What brought the U.S. into World War One? You're not going to have to worry about that for the regions, first of all. But if you're interested, you should know that the Zimmerman telegram is really what did it. Also, the sinking of the Lusitania didn't help, even though that was a British or Irish, doesn't matter. Even though that vessel was European, Americans were on it. Okay, and that did not make us happy. For the United States and World War One, the important thing is Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, where he says we got to have a League of Nations to keep peace. We have to give people in Europe self-determination. We got to break up the Ottoman Empire and the Austrian Empire. That's the stuff, U.S. related stuff about World War One you should know. Leaks for the whole test. Oh my goodness. Keep it to yourself. That's what I'll say about that. Pol Pot. All right, I talked about him briefly before. I'll take some notes on Cambodia. Why not? All right, just give me one second here. Hopefully, you guys are. I don't want to say enjoying the stream. Who's enjoying doing studying the last day of school? But hopefully, this has been helpful. Let me know if it's been helpful. I would love some positive feedback. That'll keep me going. But I am getting tired. It's been a long day. It's been a long school year. Uh, I'll go hopefully another 20, 30 minutes or so. But anyway, let's talk about Cambodia very briefly. All right, so Cambodia was part of a larger French controlled colony, which was called Indochina. I wouldn't be so worried about trying to remember that. But Indochina was like Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam, all one place. Vietnam becomes independent later on. So Cambodia, part of a larger French controlled colony, start turning to communism around the same time Vietnam did. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge, which was the communist group that was trying to take power in Cambodia. Okay. And when they took power, the Khmer Rouge wanted to, I'll just put Khmer, wanted to turn Cambodia into a classless society. where everyone was a farmer. Okay, so when you do that, you have to empty out all the cities, and I guess you could say remove all the wealthy and intellectual people. So you could call this genocide, ethnic cleansing, I guess. It's certainly a human rights violation because they forced people to move. They killed people. Okay, a lot of people, in fact. Eventually, the Khmer Rouge are removed from power by the Vietnamese. Okay, but that's what you need to know about Cambodia. When you see Cambodia in the regions, it's probably going to be about the Khmer Rouge committing human rights violations because they wanted to turn Cambodia into a classless society where everyone was a poor farmer. I believe you can refer to things such as humanitarian groups and the UN, which try to alleviate the effects of imperialism. I think that's a great thing you could possibly say. Certainly. Because the effects of imperialism mean that countries who were colonies are now independent and still struggling to modernize, industrialize, and the UN helps with that. Okay, because they have humanitarian groups who provide aid to people, but you also have things like the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, who often loan money. Those organizations or international organizations that loan money to countries in times of need when they're desperate to help them from prevent them from collapsing, or loan money to countries to help them build roads, bridges, factories to help get them going. Glorious Revolution. Do not concern yourself with the Glorious Revolution on the regions because the Glorious Revolution happened before 1750, and you do not need to know anything that happened before 1750 on this test. Easiest way to write a turning point. I'm assuming you mean for a CRQ. Okay, if you check out my CRQ videos, a lot of them have turning point questions. But when you get a turning point CRQ, try to ask yourself what is the historical event that happened between document one and document two that caused the change to happen. Okay, so for example, in one of my recent CRQ videos, there was document one that showed a map of Europe before World War One and a map of Europe after World War One, and a speech from Woodrow Wilson saying groups have to have independence. It was a turning point question, and the kids were like, "Okay, World War One has to be the turning point because without World War One, the map of Europe would not have changed." So you identify World War One as the turning point. You write a little bit about document one as like the before, and a little bit about document two as the after. And if you write about those documents a little bit, you get your evidence. Please, guys, when you do your CRQ stuff, I talk about this in my CRQ videos. Check those out. Don't fill up the page with information. Don't quote documents line by line. When it says use evidence, that does not mean use quotes. You can paraphrase your information from documents and keep it short and sweet. If you don't believe me, check out the answer keys on the state website. For a cause and effect question on the CRQ, 2 sentences should cover it. Maybe three tops. Not five, not six, not seven, not eight. You don't have the time. You want to spend as much time as you can on the essay. Can you literally just put anything relating to the topic that's relative to the essay as the context to expand evidence and cement it? I wouldn't say literally anything, right? If you want to really like think about it, like the big, there's so much that can come before an event in history. You can't like give the entire timeline of the past. You want to kind of keep it kind of like direct causes. Boer War. I doubt you'll have to know about the Boer War specifically by name on the regions. Okay, I'll give you the short and sweet version. The Dutch were first to colonize South Africa, just like they colonized New York City. Okay, it was called New Amsterdam back then in the 1600s. The British rise as a even stronger world power, and they start to take over colonies that the Dutch had first. So they take over New York. They take over New Amsterdam. They turn it into New York. They take over South Africa. Okay. And the Boer War is the conflict that was fought between the Dutch settlers, who were the Boers, and the British over control of South Africa. And the British win that war. But even though the British won, there were still many Boers who were, again, descendants of the original Dutch who went to South Africa. Those Boers set up a government and a set of laws that would bring about apartheid. Yes, there's always a curve for the regions. It changes every year. Okay, but that is the case. Yes. Tokugawa already covered it. Go back after the video is over or check out other videos that I've done. I got a ton on my channel. Every video on my channel is about preparation for the global history and geography regions. That's my only area of expertise. Okay, when it comes to history stuff. So that's what I'm good at. That's what you guys should check out. Irish potato famine. Yeah, it comes up on the regions a lot. Um, so basically, Ireland was a British colony, right? A target for British imperialism. And so, if you're going to do that, you want to profit off of owning your colony, right? So the British go to Ireland, they take over lands there, and they take all the good crops from Ireland. They take the wheat, they take the oats, and Irish people are left with being reliant on a potato. And the British don't really do anything to help the Irish when the potato plant goes bad. They kind of believe that laissez-faire should be what we do. Leave the problem alone, it'll resolve itself. So a lot of Irish blame the British for its policies that hurt Ireland in this regard and not doing enough to help. Many Irish people die of famine. Many Irish people migrate out of Ireland to places like the US, and also helps usher in more Irish nationalism and desire for Irish independence. How many short answer questions are there? There are two CRQs on the regions. A CRQ is a pair of documents, and there are three questions attached to that pair of documents. So in total, a CRQ has six short answer questions. 14 points could be on the Regents. Okay, it was recently. It's Woodrow Wilson saying we need a League of Nations. We need Europeans to have their own country, meaning self determination. Make the world safe for democracy. Annexation is another word for taking over land. Classic example from the Regents is when Austria Hungary annexed Bosnia. Okay, they took over Bosnia. And the Slavic peoples in the Balkan Peninsula were upset about this because they said, hey, Bosnia should be part of a Slavic country in the Balkans that we're trying to get here. So Slavic peoples, many of them lived in Serbia, were upset about this. They killed the Archduke of Austria to send a message, and you get your World War One. Israel and what were the Arab effects on? I'm not sure what you mean by Arab effects on Israel. But if you, I'll go into some of the backstory. That's one of the more complicated topics. I'm gonna just talk at this point in the last 20 minutes or so. Um, but basically, ever since the Roman Empire fell, like the 600s, Arabs lived in what you call Palestine. Okay, and when they settled in that part of the world, Christians tried to take it back. That was what the Crusades were all about, and that did not work out for the Christians. So it remained in the hands of Muslims. Okay, Muslims are people who practice Islam. Most Arabs, meaning people who came from the Arabian Peninsula, most but not all, practice Islam and write in Arabic. So if I say Arabic or an Arab or a person of Arabic descent, I mean typically a person who can trace their history back to the Arabian Peninsula, who probably speaks and writes in Arabic and practices Islam, most likely. So people had been in Palestine of Arabic descent for a long, long time. But Jewish people say, well, we were here first. Why? Because I don't know, 8,000 BC or so, right? Jerusalem was the capital of the Jewish kingdom of Israel, going back a long, long time ago. So it's like a classic fight over who was there first versus who has been there, I guess you could say. Anyways, so Jewish people had been kicked out of that area a long, long time ago. They were kicked out, in fact, by the Romans. They weren't the first empire to kick the Jews out of Palestine, but too much ninth grade. Anyway, Jewish people are a persecuted minority throughout the world. They start to say to themselves, hey, we should all like reunite in our homeland and call it our own. And if we're the majority group, no one will pick on us. So over a long period of time, increased Jewish migration happens into Palestine. And then after the Holocaust, the world is like, wow, like Jewish people really need their own country so that they're not picked on anymore. And so they create the country of Israel, meaning who's they? It's the Allied powers after World War II. They create the country of Israel. Arabs are not happy because that means they lose control over some of their lands, and you get conflict there ever since, unfortunately. Let's see, what else? How many multiple choice do we need to get right in order to pass? That changes in every Regents exam. If you go on the state website, I always have links in the description. They have like a scoring key, and it'll show you how many you have to get right to get a 65. It's hard. I don't want to just throw a number out there because it changes. If you're getting less than 20 right on the multiple choice, we should probably do some studying tonight if you're practicing. Change continuity for the essay. Okay, so change means what has the world done to try to fix the problem? Continuity means how does this issue persist? So if you could talk about a current example of the enduring issue happening in the world now in your conclusion paragraph, that's good continuity. Imperialism in China, we already talked about that. I didn't touch on the Boxer Rebellion though. Okay, so after the Europeans carve up China into spheres of influence, people are unhappy about that. They're unhappy with the European influence, and they're unhappy with their own government for allowing this to happen. So the Boxers lead an uprising against the Europeans, and it does fail, okay, but it does convince China that some changes are needed. Keep practicing. If you're getting less than 15 correct, that would be my advice for sure. King Louis could be on the Regents. Yes, he absolutely could. Pun intended, because absolute monarch, right? There's a cheesy joke for you. All right, it's coming up on 2 hours. Anybody have any other specific things to talk about? I have no idea what's going to be on the Regents. It it's remarkably similar, I'll say, as the years go on. So I know, like when I put out videos every June, and people tend to flock to my latest video, which I get. But the June 2019 stuff could be on the Regents tomorrow. Okay, they could use the same document as June 2019. They could ask the same question or a similar question, just worded a little bit differently. So I know it's like last minute crunch time, but watching a video from the August, or rather, watching a video about the August 2024 Regents would be just as helpful, in my opinion, if not more helpful, than watching the January 26th Regents review, because it's unlikely that they're going to ask the same exact things that they just asked about in January. They probably want to shake it up a little bit. You're welcome, Bucket DHA. I'm very happy to help. We did the Russian Rev already. Go back later on. Iranian Revolution. We didn't mention White Revolution specifically by name, but we did talk about it. The White Revolution is when Shah Reza Pahlavi tries to modernize, westernize, industrialize Iran and starts giving women rights that they didn't have before. And that makes the conservative traditionalist population of Iran unhappy, and that helps bring about the Iranian Revolution. They love to ask about the tension between the modern and traditional on the Regents, whether that's maybe an enduring issue in the essay or maybe in the multiple choice. Remember, there was also resistance against Kemal Ataturk and his westernization of Turkey. There still kind of is resistance against that in Turkey. There was a question a couple of years ago, or maybe it was it June last year, maybe? It wasn't that long ago that they asked about the current leader of Turkey, this guy named Erdogan. And he's a little bit more old school and kind of undoing some of the things that Kemal Ataturk was doing. So there could be some current stuff on the Regents. I have no idea, Sophia, what's going to be on the test. I wish I did. That would certainly make my videos more popular, and I would get more views if I could just tell the kids what's definitely going to be on the test. But unfortunately, even us teachers do not have access to that in advance. Irish topics could be the potato famine, which we just talked about before. Treaty of Versailles, we talked about it before. Definitely go backtrack later. Ottoman Empire, we talked about before in terms of what happened to it after World War One. But you should know for the Ottomans in the World in 1750 unit, the Ottoman Empire was massive. Okay, it was so big it controlled parts of North Africa, Europe, and Asia. Made a lot of money controlling trade in the Mediterranean Sea and the waterways connecting the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. That's like where Constantinople was, or now Istanbul. And they made a lot of money and succeeded for a long time. The Ottoman Empire lasted about 600 years. It was very small towards the end, but still, there's a turning point in all this when the Europeans, when the Ottoman Empire conquers Constantinople back in the 1400s. Europeans start saying to themselves, Ottomans are a threat. They control the trade routes. They're making trade with Asia more expensive for us. So we're just not going to buy our Chinese products from the Ottomans anymore. We're just going to go to China and India ourselves. And when that becomes more of a thing for Europeans, the Ottoman economy starts to tumble. They lose control for that reason because their economy is weaker. You get increased nationalism within the Ottoman Empire. That comes up a lot on the regions. Like the Greeks, they didn't want to live under Ottoman rule because they showed some preference for Muslims as opposed to Christians. And so between a poor economy over time and increased nationalism, the Ottoman Empire will eventually collapse after World War One. Catholics and Protestants in Ireland don't need to know about it. I wish you did, because that stuff interests me, but that's not something that they're going to be asking about tomorrow. If you don't believe me, check out the New York State Social Studies Framework. It is not there. I used to teach it, even though it wasn't there, because I find that interesting. But there's the thing about teaching a history subject is that history is always expanding, right? There's always new stuff that the Regents is going to want to cover. So I have to kind of pick and choose. Even the interesting stuff that's not on the Regents that I used to cover, I kind of cut down on that these days. Sylvia, it's hard to know, kiddo. I'm not sure what's going to be on the test. So I would definitely check out as many of my old videos as you can. Salt March is when Gandhi said, you know what? We're going to peacefully disobey British laws. We're going to turn the British into a bunch of big bullies. So there was a British law saying you couldn't buy British salt. You couldn't make your own. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Let me fix what I just said. There was a British law in India that said that the Indians could not make their own salt. They had to buy their salt in stores so that the British could tax the salt. Gandhi's like, forget that. We're going to walk to the Indian Ocean and we're going to take water and boil it, and then boom, we have salt. Okay, so Gandhi gets arrested for making salt. That turns the world against the British, and it kind of rallies people around Gandhi because they're more and more convinced that the British are a bunch of bullies that have to go. Apartheid and Glasnost we covered already. Go back later for sure. Enlightenment we did cover already. Let's go Mets and Knicks. Let's go Knicks for sure. I'm a Yankees fan personally. Main topic. Wish I could tell you, kiddo. There's no main topic on the regions. They love to spread it out over the 28 questions, beginning with the World in 1750 unit and going up all the way until it could be the 2010s. They've asked questions about something called the Arab Spring, which is when a bunch of Middle Eastern countries used social media to coordinate protests against dictatorships throughout the Middle East. Yes, we did the Enlightenment for sure. It's okay. Cyst X. Sorry. You could go back later. Okay, and a lot of my videos cover the Enlightenment because the Enlightenment comes up on the regions a lot. In fact, there was a while on my channel where I was like, you know what? I should branch off and do videos that are not specifically Regents review videos, just general social studies stuff. So I have specifically a video about the Enlightenment. Okay, it's just called the Enlightenment. Look at the thumbnail; it says the Enlightenment. And I have a video about the concept of enlightened despots, which comes up on the Regents sometimes. These are absolute leaders who are inspired by Enlightenment ideas. People like Catherine the Great, Robespierre, Reign of Terror, French Revolution, chopping off people's heads. Anybody who is accused of being loyal to the king or disloyal to the French revolutionaries. Napoleon is a popular military leader during the French Revolution because remember, France was at war with its neighbors because its neighbors wanted to prevent the French Revolution from succeeding. Napoleon rises to power because he's delivering victories for the French. He has a coup d'etat. Okay, coup d'etat is how that kind of looks in English. And Napoleon seizes power, and even though he kind of rules France as an absolute leader, he's cheered for restoring stability to France. And even though he undid a lot of the changes associated with the French Revolution, he did bring some French revolutionary ideas to the rest of Europe and inspired a lot of nationalism in parts of the world uh, as a result of his empire building. Just remember about the despots and their ideas and all that. It's good advice for sure. Mandela, Nelson Mandela was a leader in the African National Congress who was fighting against apartheid. He began with civil disobedience, meaning nonviolent protest, but Due to frustration, the African National Congress gets a little bit more violent. So Mandela and other members of the ANC are arrested. Mandela is in prison for 27 years. People don't forget Mandela. And when he's eventually freed, he runs for president and he's elected once apartheid ends. Simon Bolivar, we covered that, a nationalist leader of South America. Olympe de Gouges was a woman who was doing her thing during the French Revolution times, who basically she took that very famous document, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, and just kept adding the word women to it, basically saying, "Hey, French revolutionaries, you say that this is all about bringing Enlightenment ideas to the people and rights and freedoms and stuff. So how about we just add the word women to that document and make it applicable to them as well?" And for that reason and for other reasons, like she was a little bit less radical. I believe she still was kind of loyal to the king. She was executed during the French Revolution. So it kind of shows the hypocrisy of the French Revolution. It was supposed to be about natural rights, protecting them. But then the French revolutionaries go, "Oh, you look rich. I'm going to kill you. Oh, you want women's rights? You're challenging us. We're going to kill you too." The world is unfortunately full of hypocrisy. Cold War, how did it start? I would argue that the Cold War starts with the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because that is what prompts the arms race. It also starts with the fact that Joseph Stalin promised that Eastern European countries would be able to become democratic if they wanted to. But he broke that promise. The Soviet troops were all over Europe after World War II, and he does not send his troops home until they leave behind communist governments. So that makes the West distrust Stalin, and Stalin distrusts the West because they developed this technology without him knowing it, this nuclear technology. Cambodia, we talked about. Perestroika, we talked about. Let's not spam the chat, guys, okay? Globalization, we already talked about. I'm not going to dive down those roads again. Feel free to look at the transcript a little bit later on and check those things out. Definitely check out the old videos for sure. What's the highest you can get without the Enduring Issues essay? I'd have to pull it up. You could check the state website. I mean, you should always do the essay. Never skip anything, guys. If you're desperate, just come up with something. Sometimes you might just stumble. Like I don't recommend this. Okay, so I shouldn't even say it. But let's say you have a half an hour left, and it's like, oh man, I got to write an enduring issues essay now. If you just summarize three documents and state that there's an enduring issue common in those three, you're gonna get some points, and those points could be the make or break for you. Okay, that's obviously your bare minimum, but that is way better than leaving the essay blank. Okay, pick an enduring issue, summarize three documents, gets you, I don't know, 2 out of 5 on the essay, and that could get you into passing. Iranian Revolution, we covered it. Historical circumstances that led to events such as World Bank, apartheid, communist revolution. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's just the causes for all those events, right? The World Bank is caused by, I guess you can make the case for the end of World War II being a historical circumstance for the World Bank, because after World War II, a lot of places become independent and are in need of financial assistance to rebuild themselves, and so they depend on loans from the World Bank, and the World Bank is often loaning countries money too if they think that those countries might be better strengthened and therefore resisting radicalism and communism. Apartheid circumstances could be the Dutch colonization and the white minority control. Communist revolution historical circumstances is the Industrial Revolution in Russia, right, causing people to have kind of a miserable existence, and the absolute rule of the czar not helping matters. Ataturk westernized Turkey, yes. What are some outside information you can use? It depends on what the essay is about, right? Yeah, German unification, Otto von Bismarck. Okay, so back before the 10th grade curriculum, I guess you could say, Germany was not Germany. Germany was something called, I don't want to confuse you guys too much, but it was called like the Holy Roman Empire. And it wasn't really an empire. It was a bunch of teeny tiny, little teeny tiny, microscopic German countries, we'll say, that all kind of did their own thing. And so, therefore, German people as a culture, a German cultural group, they were not united into one country. And Otto von Bismarck is a guy from Prussia, which is one of those tiny German countries. And he said, you know what we should do? We should all just be in one country together and have one economy, one government, one military. And that would make German people stronger. And a lot of people, a lot of German tiny little countries were on board with that and signed up and volunteered to join with Prussia and Otto von Bismarck. And those that didn't, he said, well, we're going to force you to do so with blood and iron, right? Militarism. Prussia was just it doesn't exist anymore. A tiny country that was in Western Europe that what primarily had German people living in it. That's where Otto von Bismarck was from. Enduring Issues essay. Start your essay off by telling the reader a couple of things and check out my videos. Tell the reader what enduring issue means. Tell the reader which enduring issue you're writing about. Explain what the enduring issue means. That's how I would start the essay. The UN is established after World War II because the world is convinced of two things: that we need an international peacekeeping organization and that the League of Nations was an epic failure. So the UN is less of an epic failure, I would say, because it does have the participation of more countries, including the United States, which, if you remember, the United States did not participate in the League of Nations. What's the best issue to use? That's going to depend on my documents, right? You got to look at those 5 documents and go, okay, what is an issue that's common in 3 out of the 5 of these? So that will change every time. Alicia, if you don't have any outside information, uh, it happens. Okay. Make sure that the summaries that you do of the documents have a lot of detail. That will help you. I'll give you guys about 5 more minutes. I'm tired. I'm hungry. It's been a long school year. You have a tremendous amount of videos that I've put together for you guys over the years that you should definitely check out. Jayla, check out my Enduring Issues videos and look in the description because there's a link that I to a Google Doc that you can check out. Do a file, make a copy if you want to own your own copy of it, or take screenshots. Where I have a bunch of enduring issues that have come up over the course of the last 7 years. South Africa recovered, Bolivar recovered. Jose de San Martin is kind of like Simon Bolivar's BFFL. They together liberated South America from Spanish control. Besides Brazil, that was under Portuguese control. That's a different story that you don't have to worry about. Haiti, French colony, sugarcane, African slave labor. Toussaint Louverture leads an uprising. Haiti becomes a republic in 1804, a country that has struggled financially since then because they're trying to recover from having an economy solely focused on developing a cash crop of sugarcane. Very happy to help. Thank you for the compliment. Russian Revolution we recovered. We covered that stuff already, so you can backtrack a little bit later on. I'll do a couple more questions if it's stuff I haven't already covered. Caroline, it depends. It depends. It depends on how much time you have to plan out your writing. One thing I tell my students to do is write about, if you can, the historical circumstances for the document, if possible, because that would count as outside information, and that might be something you talk about in a body paragraph, right? Other types of outside information, like a modern day example of the enduring issue, or how we've dealt with the issue, that can go in the conclusion paragraph. World War One, we talked about, but one thing we didn't talk about with World War One is the technology. The Regents loves to put in a poem by this British guy named Siegfried Sassoon. Okay, again, guys, watch the old videos because a poem from a British guy about World War One that appeared on the January 2020 Regents could be on tomorrow's exam. Again, I do not know for sure, but that could happen. Okay, and it's a poem that's come up a lot that talks about the destructiveness and the horror of World War One because of things like machine guns and poison gas and trenches. What's the common theme? That war technology leads to more death and destruction, okay, and more environmental damage. CRQ questions about audience. Yeah, those are tough. So basically, you have to ask yourself, okay, who's my intended audience, and what does that person want to hear about, and what's in that document that that person might want to hear. Okay, if that's confusing, I put out 2 CRQ videos in the last week or two. Watch those because there are intended audience questions in those videos. Again, intended audience, figure out what that person might be wanting to know about in the given situation, and then find an example of that in the source. A classic example that's unrelated to like the regions is if I'm talking at Yankee Stadium, who's my audience? It's Yankees fans. And if I'm delivering a speech about baseball teams, what am I going to do? I'm going to alter what I have to say to make my audience happy. I'm going to say the Yankees are awesome and the Red Sox stink and the Mets stink. Okay? So ask yourself, what does the audience want to hear about? Because you always want to make your audience happy. And then what's the example in the document that the audience might want to hear? And that example is what you put as your answer. I think those audience questions are the single hardest of all the CRQ questions. What do I do in CRQ if I don't know what to write? Summarize something from a document. Okay, if you have no idea what to write, summarize something you see in the document. Maybe you'll get lucky. Please, guys, do not leave anything blank on the regions. You could get lucky. You could get lucky. Bob, you should think about trying to incorporate maybe some more outside information and more explaining of things. Okay, oftentimes kids like will summarize documents to just talk about what happened in history, but not discuss how and or why things happen in history. Out explaining things and outside information helps you go from like 4 to 5. Those are the big ones. Scientific facts can count as outside information. Maybe give me an example. Tell me what you might mean by that. Investigraved. I appreciate the support and the backup. Thanks a lot for that. You've stuck around for a long time. Hopefully this has been helpful. Sometimes through the process of teaching other people, the information sticks in the brain a little bit better. It's one of the reasons why I like to put out videos. It kind of forces me to really understand the content because if I don't understand the content, I can't explain it well. Can I add social scientists to my CRQ? Give me an example. Tell me what you mean. Sophia, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Stig Marizla Mornin, you're very welcome. You do not have to worry about Canada for the regions. Sorry to my friends in Canada. But no, you really don't specifically. Canadians did participate in the D-Day invasions, and that does come up in the region sometimes. World War II stuff. Nope, don't worry about Canada. Maybe just understand that it was a part of the British Empire. The British Empire was massive. That'll change next year in U.S. history. You'll have to know more about Canada, but not this year. Don't have to worry about Canada. You don't have to worry about Australia. A lot of places that you don't have to worry about on the regions. It's hard to teach every place and everything that happens in a long period of years. So they pick and choose. Dinger Racing Network. I'm guessing it's either Mike or Adam. What's up, my man? How many pieces of evidence do you need for the CRQ, like geographic? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, to be honest. Maybe you can clarify for me. Does the Regents intentionally provide stimulus questions that don't relate to a possible enduring issue in part 3? I wouldn't say it's intentional, but it could happen. And that's why I encourage you guys to do the multiple choice first, because that might, get your memory going. And you can use information that you learned from the multiple choice as outside information on the enduring issues essay. Faux show. Investigate. Hopefully, your Global 10 teacher has prepared you well for this. Sounds like they did. Okay, Jessica. So usually for the CRQ, it says to use a piece of evidence from both of the documents. Yeah. Okay. So that means like if you're doing a cause and effect, that means refer, right? Evidence does not mean quote. It means refer to something that you saw in the source. It could be a paraphrased fact, um, and that's good enough. One from each. One, like not more than one, just one. We'll cut it. If you guys look at the state website, look at the answer keys, look at what they accepted as correct answers on CRQ questions, you'd be shocked how short the answers are, and they accept them. Seaport Rebellion, we already covered that India stuff, so check that out. Bay of Pigs, I doubt you'll get a specific question about the Bay of Pigs, okay? But basically, Cuba becomes communist with Fidel Castro in 1959. The United States is not happy about it. So they organized this invasion of Cuba that consisted of Cuban exiles, people who left Cuba when communism came to town. They go back to Cuba to try to recapture Cuba and kick out Castro, and it fails. And then Cuba goes, we think the US is a threat. Let's make friends with the Soviet Union. Let's get their nuclear missiles and bring them to Cuba. And that starts the Cuban Missile Crisis situation. If you know the game Call of Duty Black Ops, the first mission in that game is the Bay of Pigs invasion. Great game. Ask your parents first if you can play it, though. Rated M. Two Who games. I might be too old to know that one. I do game. I'm a big Nintendo guy. I run a retro video games club at my school. I love all things old, but I do love the Nintendo Switch, and hopefully someday I'll get a Switch too. I saw that announcement about the Ocarina of Time remake. The Ocarina of Time is like one of my favorite games ever from when I was a kid. So if they're gonna remake that, that might get me to get that Switch too. Sorry, tangent. Was he completely bad? No. I think with the rare exception, most people in history are not completely bad or completely good, right? We're all not perfect. But Fidel Castro gave women rights, improved the Cuban education system. Okay, you can make a case that those are good things. Oh, it's 6:50. How about this? I'm gonna cut this off at 7 o'clock on the dot. That's what we're gonna do. So anything else for the next 10 minutes, and that'll be it. You have an abundance of videos you can watch after the stream is over. And you can also just go back and watch this again. Enduring issues predictions. All I'll say is I gave my students a set of documents where the issue tended to be migration, only because we haven't seen one of those in a while. That does not mean that's coming tomorrow. I have no leaks. I have no inside knowledge. That was just my guess that hey, maybe tomorrow migration, but I don't know for sure. Check out my Enduring Issues videos where I talk about the step by step, including what to put in the conclusion. Conclusion paragraph, short and sweet answer is try to talk about what's happening in the world today that relates to the enduring issue and what have we done in the world to try to prevent that issue from happening again, which is not easy to do. That's a hard part. Elena, uh, it's tough, right? The test is tomorrow. So my recommendation is look at my multiple choice videos. Try to watch as many of those as you can. Even if you can't watch it, maybe just hear it, and maybe that'll help you. Do as much of that as you can between now and noon tomorrow. Potato famine affects migration. Yes. And if you get a set of documents about migration and none of them are about the potato famine, there's your outside information. Sylvia, yes. Enduring issues practice essay, CRQ. How do I know what I wrote would be correct on the regions? I wish there was a way to know if what we write down is correct, right? That would be nice. Do the best you can, kiddo. You got this. You guys could do this. This is not that bad of a test. Great Depression. You don't have to worry about the Great Depression in America, but you should know that the Great Depression really hurt Germany hard because while the Great Depression was happening, they're still paying reparations. So their economy is falling apart. And that leads to the rise of radicalism, like fascism, Nazis, stuff like that. The scapegoating of the Jews for Germany's problems. Again, I don't know that migration is the enduring issue tomorrow. That was just I gave an essay recently in class as a practice because we haven't seen it in a while. It could be a totally different issue. And even if you get a set of 5 documents and you can make a case that migration is an enduring issue in those documents, that doesn't mean that there are not other possible enduring issues in those documents. That's the kind of the beauty thing about that essay is that you can write about different you could choose a different issue um, oftentimes. Fascism is the Nazis in Germany. So think about Nazi ideas and you know fascist ideas. Yes, they love to repeat the same topics over and over again. So the more of the old tests that you look at or the old videos of mine that you watch, the better shape that you will be in. Definitely study as much as you can. You've got some time. You got some time. But do get a good night's sleep tonight. That's an old person talking, right? That'll help too. Fascism and Mussolini, yes. Okay. The Regents is not probably not going to ask you about Mussolini specifically. But yes, he's a fascist leader of Italy in the years before and during World War II. So Hitler and Mussolini and Emperor Hirohito in Japan are on the same team. There is no one thing that comes up in the Regents every single time. I wish there were. I would tell you that answer. But like seriously, guys, I know teachers are always like on the anti AI bandwagon, but you can use AI for like some last minute studying. Okay, you could take all the PDFs from all the old tests, put them into ChatGPT, and go, hey, what topics come up the most? It'll tell you probably better and more efficiently than I could. And you could put all those old tests into AI and go, okay, generate a study guide for me that would help me understand all the information that I can use to pass this test. If you do that for all the Regents exams, those could be like your notes for last minute crash studying, cramming, last minute cramming, I should say. Do that's good studying. Or like if you don't even want to do that, go to one of my Regents review videos. Go to the multiple choice video, for example. Open up the transcript on YouTube. Copy and paste the transcript from my video into AI and go, okay, turn this YouTube video into a set of notes like a study. Do that. That's an awesome study tool. I don't think AI is smart enough yet. I don't think you could just give it a URL and have it generate a study guide for a YouTube video, but you can copy the transcript, paste it into ChatGPT, and go, hey, turn this into notes. I think that's an awesome study tool. Like, yes, in my descriptions, I always list the topics that are covered in that video, which is hopefully helpful to you guys. I didn't learn anything. What should I do to pass? Tough, Bella. But you watch the videos. Go back to the beginning of this live stream when you can. Like I said, use your AI tools to help you. Like you can go on ChatGPT. ChatGPT knows the New York curriculum for global history. It's kind of scary how much it knows, right? So you could just ask it, like, "Hey, give me the most comprehensive guide you can to help me pass the global history regents," and maybe just study that. If your teacher puts everything on Google Classroom, maybe your teacher has review sheets on Google Classroom. Download all your test review sheets from Google Classroom as PDFs. Put them all into ChatGPT and go, hey, make me notes based on these review sheets. Give me a good study guide based on these review sheets. Chances are, I mean, most teachers probably gave you guys tests that are just old Regents questions, right? So if you have your old tests, use that as a study tool. Put those into AI. Your old review sheets, good. These are good ways to use AI. I don't mean to keep harping on that because I think if you watch my videos and hear me read the documents and watch me do the process of elimination thing, I think that's a good way to go about it. Jessica, it's not too late. Check out my videos. You got time. It's 6:57 p.m. The test is at noon tomorrow. I think you could be able you can learn something about how to write this essay between now and then if you watch some of my videos. Thanks, Bronco Legend. I appreciate that. I try. I try. This is the subject I've been teaching the most out of my 16 years of teaching high school. Yes, AI is good for generating timelines of events for sure. I'm sorry about that, Eliana. Sorry. Hopefully, I've been of a help to you. It's not too late. It's not too late. You can do some cramming right now and have a shot tomorrow. I would argue that the essay should be 5 paragraphs. Intro paragraph, a body paragraph for each of the 3 documents you're using, so 3 total, and then a conclusion paragraph. It doesn't mean they all have to be massively long, but that's how I would organize it. The conclusion paragraph is where you could talk about how it endured, right? By maybe talking about a more current example of the issue. My teacher used AI images the entire year. I wonder what for. Uh, Interesting. Happy to help, Eliana. You're very welcome. Let's go, Mets. It's hard to know. It depends on your study tactics. It's hard for me to know how if that's going to work for you. I would say hopefully. Let's go Rangers. Unbelievable. Somebody tell the governor to take 5 points off that guy's test. The topic for the essay will depend on what the documents are. Okay, you have to choose your own enduring issue that goes with 3 out of those 5 documents. Okay, so that it can't be a random topic. You have to choose an issue that goes with 3 out of the 5 documents. I wish I knew what the essay is going to have documents about. Like I said, I gave my students a practice essay about migration recently that came up years ago because we haven't seen migration in a while. So I just chose something for them to practice that hasn't been on the Regents in a while. And that's my prediction. I have no idea. I wish I did. I would tell you guys. That would certainly get me more views and smashing up the like button, right? Which, if you haven't done so, do that. Like I said, guys, I do plan. I know I said this last year as well. If you've been following me, well, I mean, why would you? Why would you watch me next year? But I do plan eventually on branching off and doing some U.S. history stuff. So, if you hit subscribe, whatever, maybe come back at this time next year and I can help you with your United States history as well. Maybe that would be helpful too. I could use the support. It's very kind of you to say, Eliana. Thank you. Review sheets. It's hard for me to share those with you guys right at this particular junction. But like I said, check out my old videos. You can kind of think of those as review sheets. And like I said, use AI to your advantage. Copy the transcript from my videos, paste them into ChatGPT, and go turn this video into a review sheet. It's remarkably amazing at doing that. Remarkably. I am not one of those teachers that's like, and AI is bad all the time. There are some legitimately great things you can do with it. And this is one of those times. If you're dying for last minute studying, take all my video transcripts where I go over information from old Regents exams, put them into AI, and get a review sheet. Take the PDFs from the state website, download them, upload them to Google Gemini, upload them to ChatGPT, and say, hey, tell me everything I need to know to make sure I do good on this test. And you will get a remarkably good review sheet. I would not spend an eternity annotating your documents. I would focus my notes on two things and look at my videos about this. Make a list of all the enduring issues you could associate with that document so that it's easier later on to identify one that's common. And maybe jot down some notes about outside information like circumstances, key people, effects of that document, similar events in history. Nothing crazy. In terms of like summarization facts, just bring a highlighter, highlight who, what, when, where, and why stuff in the document so that you can just pull those facts for your document summaries. Sentence starters, use topic sentences. One historical event that demonstrates the impact of migration is the Irish potato famine. Boom, write about the Irish potato famine if that's what you see on the Regents. Again, legit, guys, I'm not hinting, I have no idea what the enduring issues essay is going to look like tomorrow. All right, guys, it's 7:03. It's been 2.5 hours. I hope this has helped you guys. I'm gonna call it quits for now. Um, we'll see. Maybe I'll try to hop on one more time tomorrow morning, but it's unlikely I'm gonna have to do that. I have to get to school very early. But please watch my old videos. Um, and hopefully this has helped you guys. Okay. I wish you guys the best of luck. Study hard. You guys can do this. I promise you, you guys can do this. All right. Take care and best of luck. All right.